franktalks.com.
Check out the Frank Talks Relationships column currently running in the Suburban Newspaper online magazine. To read more, please visit thesuburban.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating and relationships? Visit franktalks.com.
Stop being single. Remember to sign up for the Stop Being Single newsletter and get weekly tips about how to stop being single and how to start up a love life. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
Relationships, sex, passion with Dr. Laurie Betito. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Welcome to Passion, a show all about love, sex, and relationships. Tonight on the program, The Boys Club, where we give men equal time here and we discuss issues from a male perspective. So our panelists tonight, we have Neil Kaminsky, who is my webmaster. We have our regular Passion contributor, Frank Kermit, and a very special guest, I'll tell you a little bit about that, Diego Puente, who actually his wife bought him this opportunity at a silent auction to raise money for breast cancer. The auction was put on by my friends at West Island 30-Minute Hit, and they raised over $6,400. So not just for this, obviously, but if it cost you $6,400 to be here, boy, oh boy, we better give you the whole hour. So thank you. Thank you for, we welcome you.
Thank you to my wife.
Yes, thank your wife. Exactly. Shout out. What's your wife's name?
My wife is Sandra Bakash.
Okay, there
Yes.
you go. Shout out. Thank you for lending him to us.
I think she's sending me a message by sending me here.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't know. I'm speculating.
To learn something.
Well, maybe. Neil, you got it. Okay, there's many issues that I want to discuss with you, especially from a male perspective. We've all heard about Jan Gameshi.
Yeah.
And all of the allegations of sexual assault and all kinds of other stuff. So I don't want to necessarily talk about him, or I'm done with that. But what I do want to talk about is consent issues and how do we teach boys. We usually focus on girls. You know, we tell girls, like I have daughters, right? So I'm telling them, be careful, make sure you are in a buddy system, don't take a ride from some guy you don't know, don't do this, don't do that, watch your drink, right? So it's all about teaching the girls to protect themselves so they're not victimized. But there's a missing piece. Who's teaching the boys? They're victimized by boys. So who's teaching them? Right now, and then so while we were sitting waiting to go on, I find out that all three of you have boys, young boys, and I'm wondering how you plan to address the issue. So one by one, I want to hear. All right, Diego, since you are our guest of honor here.
Thank you. Essentially, my son is 6 years old, and I think we start with a very obvious topic of respect. It's a matter of telling him about respect and how it's important to make sure that you don't do anything the girl doesn't want you to do. Or
you're actually telling him this at 6 years old?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. My son I think he's very aware of that, and I'm not just saying because he's my son. He seems to be aware of girls.
Okay.
He likes them
he
a
likes
lot.
Girls.
and I just tell him about respect, about making sure, sometimes he tells me about kissing and whatnot, and so
at 6, really?
At 6, and so I tell him instead of telling him don't do that, I just tell him, well, if you're going to do that, make sure the girl lets you do that, and only on the cheek. And so we have this little discussion, and I guess it really, you can't really be there to check that out.
Obviously.
But you just want to make sure he's doing it respectfully. He's going to do it anyway, whether you're there or not. And as he gets older, if he gets to the habit of respecting, then I think it's a good start.
And if he understands the word, right? Just
Correct.
the word of respect and what that actually means. Neil, what about you? Does your son's a bit older?
That's it. Well, my oldest son is 8 years old. And I would agree exactly the same thing. It's all about teaching respect, but it's more than, it's hard to teach respect per se. It's more of showing the act of respect. So I completely respect my wife outright. I'm very visually respectful to her in front of my children. And so they see by example.
Right.
And so they're absorbing that respect by osmosis. I mean, I put my wife on such a high pedestal. And I put women in general on pedestals. And I'm very, very respectful to them. And I view them in extremely high regard. So I think, and I'm hoping that by osmosis, my kids are absorbing some of that.
It's not really, yeah. It's by kind of like imprinting.
That's it. And so by that extension,
yeah.
they learn how to treat
and
a woman.
And it's true that they will learn, but doesn't that give you food for thought that, oh, there he is on the news again. I'm watching the TV screen on CBC. Are we ever going to not hear about him? Doesn't that give you thought to how there are so many men now who don't treat women with respect, that you wonder about their families of origins and what they learned? How come, you know what I mean? Like, how come so many people grow up in homes where there isn't respect of women?
It's that philosophy where like attracts like and bad attracts bad and so forth. So if you're in that environment, you become a product of that environment. So
that's true. It
starts within. So if you want your children to grow up being respectful and doing the right things, and you have to set the lead.
You sound like a psychologist. Pretty good.
That's my other job.
More than just my webmaster. Frank, what about you?
I got to say that I raised my son to be respectful of all people, regardless of gender. So he's a very likable kid. But that's brought in another problem, and that is the little girls. My son's only 5 at this point. The little girls in his daycare used to swarm him. And
he is cute, I have to say.
Okay, but the issue is that they would swarm him, they would grab him and pull him, and because he's so respectful, he doesn't think to smack back and say, "Don't touch me."
Well, you don't want to smack back, but you want to put boundaries.
But there were no boundaries.
Right.
It got to the point where I had to talk to one of the daycare teachers and say, "Will you step in?"
Right.
We walk through the door and everybody comes swarming at him, and now he doesn't want to go to daycare because it's too much.
Right.
It got so bad that one of the little girls there was insisting, "I'm going to marry him," to the point where they hosted a mock wedding at this daycare. They told us about it afterwards, but I'm not happy about this.
No, clearly not.
Because this is a bit too much. You're encouraging behaviors. And she's already talking about the honeymoon. And this little girl who's about 5 or 6 years old is also talking about, we should have a baby shower now because that's what people do.
Oh my goodness!
But it was too much.
Right.
Now you have to go through the divorce. You got to give back the goats.
Well, it's the other way too, right? So you bring up a point, which is, girls can be aggressive towards boys too, and so
when he's coming home with scratch marks because the girls are fighting over him and pulling on him on his arms because he's got to play with me. There's so much talk about men being abusive to women, but there's no talk about how are men supposed to defend themselves when little girls are doing that to little boys, and there's no discussion of it.
Right.
Well, I think that brings a good point about the idea of, where are they learning this from? Is it? I mean, we can always have the argument about music and what kind of movies are they watching and all that stuff. But that is really happening. The kids are actually exposed to that. I mean, my children spend 6-7 hours in school, and they have a few hours with us, and so the amount of exposure that they have with us versus school does count for their behavior. Not to mention their character and who they are. Some kids are more introverted versus extroverted. Some of them are just like that. And so you have to account to all these little things and not just decide, okay, well, this is the right thing to do. You got to put it in context and verify, okay, what's good for the child? What is he or she being exposed to? And what are they, what is their character? And how do you now put that in context and guide the child?
Well, girls will mature much more faster than boys will at that age,
and at all ages, by the way. We're not. They really do mature faster all along the way.
They are much more susceptible to social pressures, and
that's
social
true.
influence than boys will be.
Yeah, good point. This is the Boys Club tonight, and we have our special panelists of men. I'm sorry, men. Neil is here, Diego is here, and Frank. So if you want to join in, you can at 514-790-0800, or feel free to text in at 514-800. You can talk about anything anything that we're talking about, you can comment on, or if there's a topic you want to get a male perspective on, if you're a woman and you want a male's perspective on something, then feel free to ask your question. And that's it. So we are doing the Boys Club here on Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Yeah, this is the Boys Club. Tonight on the program, Neil Kaminsky, Frank Kermit, and Diego Puente here discussing, now we've been discussing the education of boys with the whole issue of respect and how do we teach that? How do we transmit that message so that we can reduce the assaults, the sexual assaults on women? And not to say that men don't get assaulted. I don't want anybody to get that message. But, the majority of victims happen to be female. So here's a couple of texters at 514-800. Ever since I was a young boy, my mother told me never let a girl hit you for nothing and to defend myself and to hit her back. Today, I'm 35. I've never hit a girl before, but should I educate my young son the same way my mother has taught me? What are your thoughts on that? Who wants to go?
Here's my philosophy. It can become necessary at any time to hit anybody who's putting your life in danger. So it's not a question of is it okay, is it not okay? It's all about context.
Right. But here are little kids. We want to be able to teach them to resolve things without hitting.
But if the kid is being bullied, if you're dealing with, and other means have been, they've tried talking, they've tried going to the authority, you've brought in the parents to try and say, look, this is inappropriate, and it's still happening. At some point, the only thing a bully will understand, regardless of gender, is being told, no, I'm not tolerating this, and I'm standing up for myself. So you always have to understand that at times it may become necessary to confront.
Okay. As a father of a son?
Yeah, I actually tend to disagree with that. My philosophy has always been violence is never the answer.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been very, very strict with both my boys to never raise a hand for any reason. When it comes to bullying, the reason why bullying works is because you can give them a sense of power if the bullying is actually affecting you personally.
Mm-hmm.
So my teaching to my older son, who has been around bullying, I don't think he's been necessarily bullied per se, but my teaching to him is, okay, make a joke out of it and you strip away that power. So you use your words as a defensive mechanism as opposed to your hands. And to him, that's always been quite successful.
All right, Diego.
Well, that's a complicated question. Fortunately, I haven't been able to figure out what a concrete answer would be, because there is the idea of, if somebody's going to hit you and threaten you, and at some point you're going to stand up and hit back, regardless of gender. But at the same time, you want them to make sure they resolve through talk. But it becomes very difficult because, you can tell them, make a fun joke out of it, but so long as they have the personality to be funny, then they have that tool.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
Right.
If the child doesn't do that, he's introverted, he can't do it, then I don't know if this is what any research would kind of suggest, but putting your foot down would probably avoid a lot of problems, and unfortunately, I guess, might give the child some confidence in spite of the fact that he's actually behaved in a way that we wouldn't want him or her to do.
That's well
Bravo.
put. Putting
So
your foot down on top of somebody else's foot.
And I wouldn't condone it, and I don't want to disagree with you,
Right.
obviously, because I also abide to the nonviolent, but I unfortunately, sometimes you just have to do that, and in spite of reason.
In terms of protecting yourself, really, that's what it boils down to. Is what you're saying.
I'm curious, have you guys been bullied?
I've been bullied. Oh God.
As a kid,
Really?
you were
As a
bullied?
child, yeah. My wife bullied. No, no. I've been bullied as a child, and I was fortunate enough to find humor and to find some sort of way of making fun of the situation and befriend these kids with a sense of humor. But I was able to develop that. Now, that doesn't mean every child can.
Well, wait. When you say you were bullied, were you just getting picked on, or were you getting beat up?
I got beat up a couple of times, and then I kind of, I befriended them somehow. Now, this was obviously a small period of time. It wasn't years and years and years. But I was living in New York City, and it was really tough.
Wow.
And so I had to figure out how to make friends with these guys. And so I did, and it was through the sense of humor. But at the first 2, 3, 4 months, I was beaten up a few times.
Yeah, but you would never have been friends with them had you started smacking them back.
No, I didn't. But I wasn't physically able to do so. I couldn't beat them up.
That's
I didn't
another
have that
thing.
ability.
That's another
But-
thing. You may not even be physically able to do that.
I would think the majority of kids who are being picked on physically
Are smaller.
than the bully to begin with.
We'll continue this discussion on the Boys Club here on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
The Boys Club tonight on the program. Neil, Frank, and Diego in studio talking about all kinds of different issues. So here's a texter at 514-800 that says, one of the guests mentioned music, and that brings up something I've been thinking a lot about. What effect do you feel music has on children? Do you think kids are growing up with a skewed view of respect because of popular music? What music do you find is worse? What do you let your kids listen to? That's good. Barney. No, I'm just kidding. So we can talk about that for a couple
My
of minutes.
kids have been listening to the Imagination Movers quite a bit. That's
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, they're fun.
They're amazing. I love watching them.
Really?
Right. They're a group of 4 adult guys who sing children's songs, but in a rock style. They love it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, and generally they've been listening to things that we listen to, which is like the Frozen soundtrack, 1,000 times a day.
Right.
The typical kid popular stuff.
I know that when my kids were young and they were like, 8, 9, 10, 11, they were begging me to get much music or music, whatever, all those things. And I said, absolutely not. I do not want music videos until you're old enough to understand what you're looking at. And they were screaming for it. Everybody else has it and everybody else is looking at music videos, and how come I can't? And to me, those music videos were like pornographic practically, and
Wow.
the message, and the violence and the words and all the rap stuff and all the, I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. Now, my kids are into like hard rock, the stuff I liked.
I think it's going to get harder because with technology, kids are going to have access to things that we wouldn't want them to see before they might be ready
like
to really
porn.
understand. Exactly. So I don't think ignorance is ever going to be a form of protection anymore. I think now
No.
you have to talk to kids right from the beginning and say, look, this is what's out there. This is why you have to be mindful of it, because trying to protect them from it by saying, well, it doesn't exist yet, I'll wait till
That's
they're
right.
older,
Yeah.
that's what makes them a
Make
potential
them
victim.
into critical thinkers. So you do have to. This is why parents have to start talking to kids about pornography from like 9, 10 years old, because these kids are already exposed. News is next, and then more Boys Club here on Passion.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
On the Boys Club tonight is Frank Kermit, who's a regular Passion contributor, Neil Kaminsky, who happens to be my webmaster, and Diego Puente, who got this opportunity because his wife bought him his spot here.
That's right.
That's right. You had to
She
pay
is a
for
good
it.
wife.
Yes.
Good wife.
She take care of me.
Just for people who don't know this, but for fundraisers, I give them certificates or the option to co-host or to be a guest on Passion, and they go up for auction, right? So it's a good way for the organization to make money. And in fact, 30-Minute Hit on the West Island made a lot of money from their for breast cancer. So good on them for taking the for doing this, taking the initiative, and good for your wife for buying this for you. She was right. You are good on the radio. See?
Thank you, honey.
So we've been talking about the education of boys, consent, influences on children. These guys all have little boys. All little boys. I only have girls, so I can only talk about that. But one of our texters was talking about music, and the skewed view of respect. Because if you do look at a lot of these videos, I don't know how much time you guys have spent looking at these videos, but it's appalling to see how women are in fact treated in those videos. It is appalling. There's all kinds of, there's tons of them.
The majority of these videos show women in very submissive
Positions right,
or scenarios.
Yes.
And it's always the man who's dominating in some way or the other, and it's frankly disgusting, as you said. It's appalling.
Right.
But the question is also why are these videos being made by women? Why are they agreeing to this? Is it because they've accepted it? Is it just a matter, I don't care, it's my body? Is that consent?
But their producers are men.
Oh, of course, but the women are consenting to it as well. I'm not saying it's right.
You're thinking like of J-Lo or something.
I mean, that was
Beyonce,
just completely...
Didn't Beyonce do her show, which was very highly sexualized, and behind her, she had the word feminist? Because, hey, it's her body. She has every right to do what she wants. The whole point of feminism is for women to be equal to men, including, I'm going to go out there and I want to do what I want to do. And if you don't like it, well,
too bad.
bad.
And if it means being sexual, well, so too bad, right?
If that's what I choose, that's what I choose. Feminism was about giving women the choice. And if they choose to do that, it's their choice. If they're consenting, why are they doing it? Because they're making a living like everybody else.
They're making money off of that. Well, but again, it's the impact. That's fine. And all those people in those videos are choosing to be in those videos. All the people in porn are choosing to be porn actresses and actors. I get it. They're consenting adults. They make that choice. But it still has an impact on the viewer, the young viewer.
For children, there is no such thing as entertainment. It's all a form of education. And this is what you have to be mindful of, that music is a form of entertainment. Children will interpret it as a form of education.
Right.
Because there are also songs that people listen to that also promote bad relationship habits, bad dating habits. She's so high above me. There was that one song where it's all about a guy who's so enamored with a woman and she's so high above me and she's this and she's wonderful. Well, there's an example of low self-esteem going out into the dating world.
That's true.
And those songs play just as much of a role in hurting people in interpretation and impression about how to behave in day-to-day life.
I think the reality is that you've got television, movies, videos, internet. You have so many areas where there's influence that if you have to keep the dialogue open with your kids, that's your only protection. You cannot take all those things away. That they will have access one way or the other. So the conversation needs to happen, and I think that's really, really very clear. Here's a question for the guys: is it a turn on for you men if a woman is the dominant one with character in the relationship? You think that's your way? Is that why you're laughing, Diego?
I don't know. That's a very open question. I don't think it's a matter of yes and no. I think it's...
Well, I guess it's how do you each feel about dominant women?
When she says character, does she mean like pretend characters or personality?
No, I think personality. I'm guessing it's about being the strong personality in the relationship.
I think that works.
That works for you? That works?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, yeah.
I've dated very, very submissive women. I've dated very, very dominant women. When I went to choose a wife, I wanted one with an incredibly strong character. Because what I was thinking was, I want to make sure that if I'm on my deathbed and she has to raise our children without me, that she's going to be able to step up and do what's necessary for our children. I don't want a mouse.
Okay, that makes sense.
Personally, I like the fact that my wife is quite assertive, and I like the fact that there's a domination in that relationship, for example.
Right. Of course, it always just appears like a dominant, dominant, because it's always the stronger one who's the loudest one and who just looks like. Then there's like the silent partner who's just as strong, but he's silent, right?
Yeah.
And people mistake that, because aren't men like seen as. We have expressions for that. Oh, he's whipped, right? Well, where's that come from?
Well, I think that it's one of those things that you grew up. The guy is supposed to be stronger. And this whole myth around what a man should be and a woman should be, and I don't. That's based on what evolution. That's based on what on our social culture
more than anything.
Exactly.
There's a difference between a woman telling you, okay, you can't go out tonight because I want to go out tonight, or you can't see this guy because of such and such reason, or I'm doing this tonight. Basically putting the man down. Okay, that's basically when you call a man, a mouse or whipped or whatever.
Right.
But I think this question from your viewer, from your listener, is more, okay, you're in a relationship where the woman is not basically submissive to everything you're doing.
Right.
Right. So it's an equal partnership, but in some respects, it's also the woman has she can take care of herself as well.
Right. I think
And
that
she can take care of you.
Right. I think it's the strong character part. It's having that being somewhat aggressive, but not aggressive in a bad way.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point.
I like to use the terms, there's a difference between being assertive and being domineering.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I wouldn't have married my wife if she was domineering. I wouldn't have dated any women who were domineering.
Right.
But I like a woman who's assertive, that I know that I can count on her to mind the store when I'm not around.
Right.
I don't want to be with a mouse who is too afraid of the world and hides in a corner.
That's right.
All right, so there's consensus there, or I've got three feminists in the room. All right, someone says, could you talk about the topic, which is female consent? So I'm not sure about if that means consent, females asking for consent, or consent about, the whole issue of getting consent when you getting involved sexually, and for women to get consent. And actually, consent works both ways, by the way. It works for men and it works for women. And, it works in straight relationships and gay relationships. And this is something that we all need to be aware of, that is important. And we need to let our kids know about this, let our teenagers know about consent, and even our adults who don't seem to understand the concept. Or some adults who don't seem to understand the concept. And on a lighter note, 2 votes for rock. I wondered this because I'm a metalhead rocker. Butt length hair, wow, beard, band shirt, etc. And we still get a bad rep. Compared to rap music, though, its lyrics are almost tame. It's scary to see what children are being subjected to. Plus, there is no push to learn guitar. As you say that, it's so fun. I left my home, and my husband is teaching my daughter electric guitar and teaching her how to do all that rock stuff because she's so into it. She wants to learn desperately to play electric guitar. So that's a different influence, I think, but that's as they get older and they learn to appreciate music in a whole other way.
I often find that rap music is a lot more about violence.
Yes.
Rock and roll was about sex. That's why rock and roll still gets the bad rap, but rap,
which is violence,
is a lot more acceptable than sex for some people.
That's pretty sad, right?
But why is that then? I mean, rap is very popular. It's not going anywhere. And yeah, the lyrics can be very harsh.
Pretty extreme.
Extreme.
Yeah.
I mean,
when you have rap songs talking about shooting cops.
Yeah, but that's also a social reality, right? In the context
which came first, right? We can talk about that. We'll be back with the Boys Club, and maybe we'll talk about women and cheating even on the program. You're listening to Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Yeah, let's talk about sex. With the boys here on the Boys Club, we have Neil, Frank, and Diego in studio. Okay, the texter writes back again. The guys did not address the topic of female consent. You're going to have to be a little more specific about what you mean. Consent, that women should give consent, men should give consent. What are you talking about when you say female consent? So write back and be a little more explicit. In the meantime, somebody says here, you're all talking about domination, the submission that you like, but it still implies that the men control or choose how much power they allow a woman. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that at all.
No.
Okay, so sorry, friend. They don't agree with you. All right. Let's. I read this interesting article about married women cheaters. We always assume as a society that, it's mostly the men who cheat on their wives. Well, according to this study, that is not true. New research is showing that many married women are seeking affairs for romance and sexual satisfaction without any plans of divorcing their partner. So, of course, let's take it with a grain of salt. It's from ashleymadison.com, which is the site for cheaters.
Yeah.
And they polled women, and they found that 67% of the women there seeking an affair cited the desire for more passion. So apparently women do get lost in the boredom and monotony of marriage, and when they want to feel like they are special and adored, they tend to seek a partner to fulfill that need if their partner isn't meeting that need. Now there's a truth in that women tend to seek affairs for the attention because they're lacking attention at home, and they are looking for that adoration or that attention. Whereas if you look at men, again, I'm generalizing, but men tend to seek it out for the sexual satisfaction. So there is two different things. I just want to get your take on that. And also I want to ask you guys a question from a male perspective. Do you think it's true that women are more forgiving of cheating behavior than men?
I think my wife, if she, I don't think she would ever forgive me. That's not even a question. How is that even possible to
forgive?
No, to establish if a woman is, wouldn't that depend on a person's personality regardless of gender?
Well, there are studies that show that women tend to be more forgiving of their partners, and that women will be more forgiving of sexual cheating. In other words, where there's not an affair or their partner isn't in love with anybody else. But men are more likely to be angrier be bothered more by the sexual nature of the relationship that a woman may have. So it's opposite. Women are more upset about the relationship and men are more upset about the sex. So, it's interesting. Frank,
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I actually think that's right. I think women are a lot more forgiving. In some cases, these women don't really have anywhere else to go. So they could leave their husbands who are cheating on them, but depending on their age and depending on their life circumstance, where are they going to go? Are they going to get into another serious relationship? Is it going to be that easy? Because women will have no problem finding another sexual partner.
Right. But I don't think that, I don't think that's the issue. I really don't. I don't think that's why women forgive. I don't think that's the reason, because that implies that most women have no means on their own. And today's woman is not that
I'm
woman.
not talking about their financial situation. I'm talking about the fact that older women struggle to get commitment. And because older women struggle to get commitment from the next person, they might be a lot more forgiving only because they have nowhere else to go.
I disagree. I disagree with that.
This might skew the topic a bit, but there might be an analogy to why a woman who is in an abusive relationship, never mind the cheating aspect,
right,
but just purely abusive, either verbally or physically, why does she stay within that relationship?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the answer to that. I'm not really sure why that happens, but it could be.
That's more what Frank is talking about. Is could be somebody who feels like there's the insecurity or they've been beaten down. Somebody said the word beaten down before. Yeah. Beaten down so much that they don't they don't feel they have the capacity to be on their own. They've grown dependent in that way because they've been beaten down.
And in a way, it becomes the norm to them as well. And the converse can happen as well. A woman can abuse a man in many ways.
Right.
So that becomes the norm that is too scary to leave. So unfortunately, that's what happens sometimes.
Yeah, and right.
Forgiving is a big word. I think there's acceptance. There's swallowing it. I guess the pain or But I think it's very to forgive for something like that. I think it takes a lot. I don't think women
does take a lot.
Forgive. I think they accept. They kind of verify or check out their circumstances and decide if they want to stay or not. But I think forgiving is a big word. I don't think.
But as a therapist, I can tell you that most marriages don't break up because of cheating. That many do seek to repair, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
it's a lot of work. There's no question about
sometimes
that.
It could be an eye opener. Why did you leave me? What did I do wrong?
Right. Or what's wrong in our relationship? Yeah. It can't, often that's the way it is. So we'll come back and talk more about cheating women, if you'd like, and some of your texts right here on Passion on CJAD 800.
You're listening to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, the podcast. Hear the show live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD 800.
Wow, this show has gone very quickly. The Boys Club tonight on the program. Neil Kaminsky, Diego Puente, and Frank Kermit in studio. A couple of texts here. As a woman, the sex and cheating is precisely what upsets me, and my friends agree. Plus, once a man cheats, he's history in my book. And I didn't say it wouldn't bother anybody, but the affair, the long-standing affair, tends to be more disturbing to the women than something that is purely a sexual encounter.
Would it be their fear of abandonment then? Because if there's if it's just a sexual thing and he's not leaving, I don't have to worry about being abandoned by him.
Yeah,
but if it's a
that can be an
relationship, well, he might leave me for a relationship.
Right. Could be. Now, in the last thing, somebody kept coming back with the female consent. When we talked about consent, we talked about how, women have to, a man has to, or a partner has to ask for consent along the entire way. Can I kiss you? Can I touch you? Can I have intercourse with you?
And in
Is
today's
this okay?
world,
Is this okay?
And in today's world, you want to have it over email and text.
There's an app for that.
As well. Well, actually, yeah, there is an app.
I know. Guys, unfortunately, that's it for us. Thank you very much. It's been great having the guy's perspective on here. So, Diego, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. It was a great experience. Thank you.
Great. And our regulars, Neil, Frank, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Laurie. Thanks
to James Foster in Master Control and Jay as well on the board there. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. If you want to reach me, passion at CJAD.com, or you can go to my website, drlaurie.com. News is coming up next, followed by the CJAD Comedy Show. Have a great rest of the night. And please remember, life is short, so do take the time to smell the flowers and indulge your passions.
Listen to Passion with Dr. Laurie Betito, live weeknights 10 to 11 on CJAD and CJAD.com.
Need help with love, sex, dating, and relationship issues? Help from Frank Kermit, the best-selling author and Canada's most international relationship coach, is only a click away at franktalks.com. Coaching is available in person, by phone, and by Skype for singles, couples, and alternative lifestyles. franktalks.com.
The Monogamy Map. Remember to sign up for the Monogamy Map newsletter and get weekly tips about navigating the journey of setting up and creating successful monogamy for two. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
Remember to sign up for the Alternative Relationship Choices ARC newsletter and get weekly tips to guide you through polyamory, swinging, and the basics of non-monogamy. We can help you find your ARC, your alternative relationship choice. Sign up at franktalks.com now.
If you need help with your relationships, my buddy Frank, he's got some tips. Just go to franktalks.com. His advice is better than your mom's. He knows what you're going through, Frank has been there too. So log on to franktalks.com. franktalks.com.